Xtalks is the industry leader in connecting life science, food, healthcare, and medical device professionals. The Xtalks Life Science Podcast features insightful conversations with industry experts about all things pharma, biotech, and more.
Hello and welcome to the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. I'm Ayesha, Rashid, Senior Life Science Journalist at Xtalks.com, and this week I'm delighted to introduce a very special guest on our show, as always. I'm excited to be joined by Joel Latham, who is the CEO, President, and Director of Incannex Healthcare. Incannex is a biopharmaceutical company developing novel cannabinoid pharmaceuticals and psychedelic therapies to address chronic and underserved health conditions. The company is advancing an innovative pipeline, including treatments for obstructive sleep apnea, rheumatoid arthritis, and generalized anxiety disorder. Joel has more than 20 years of senior management and operations experience in both public and private sectors. Under Joel's leadership, Incannex has advanced and prioritized multiple therapeutic candidates into clinical stage development. Previously, Joel was the CEO and Managing Director of Incannex Australia, where he played a key role in the company's growth and its successful transition to Nasdaq. Joel has also held senior leadership roles in corporate strategy and global market development at places like Mars Foods, Tabcorp, and Philip Morris International. With multiple late-stage clinical trials underway, Incannex is positioned at the intersection of cannabinoid science, psychedelics, and chronic disease treatment. To learn more about Incannex's clinical programs, the potential of these emerging therapeutic modalities, and Joel's perspectives on where the future of cannabinoid and psychedelic-based medicines is headed, let's turn to him now. Joel, thank you so much for being on the show today.
It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. And Joel, I'd love to learn firstly more a bit about Incannex Healthcare and really what the company's mission and goals are and what really sets the company apart in the cannabinoid and psychedelic therapeutic space. And of course, the space has been growing tremendously in the past several years, particularly having a really science-backed focus. And so that's very exciting to see so many companies coming out, really working in this field, but really bringing and honing in on the science. And so I'm really interested to learn how Incannex fits into the landscape.
For sure, and it is an exciting space to be in, without a doubt. So we see ourselves as a science-led combination medicines company focused on rapidly developing innovative oral fixed-dose treatments and therapeutic regimes for people living with challenging chronic conditions. So our mission is to change the lives of millions of patients suffering from the indications that we're targeting that have limited or no treatment options available. And that's why we see ourselves being primed to be successful in the future. We've been able to significantly de-risk each of our 3 lead assets, and we're well on our way to potentially providing real-world lasting positive outcomes for millions of patients suffering from these conditions globally. The first being obstructive sleep apnea, second being generalized anxiety disorder, and our third lead asset is for rheumatoid arthritis. All indications are in multi-billion-dollar addressable markets, and we are truly innovating and disrupting the way that we're potentially treating these indications, being we're looking at alternative therapies and utilizing medicinal cannabinoids and psychedelic therapies. So as you mentioned, the landscape has changed and evolved over the past few years. And I'm pleased to say that we have been at the forefront of that, and we've been leading the way in both sectors as we've continued to develop our assets into later stage clinical trials and continued to work with the FDA as we continue to push our assets towards registration and commercialization.
Wonderful. And in terms of the conditions that you've mentioned, in your opinion, and based on, again, the field and in the space, what are really the unmet needs as we talk about the unmet medical needs? And what have been the challenges in really developing effective therapies? There are therapies out there for these conditions, but what is needed to really push the envelope and, in your opinion, for generalized anxiety disorder, obstructive sleep apnea, and rheumatoid arthritis?
Yes. So to start with, without a doubt, our lead asset, which is IHL-4-2X targeting obstructive sleep apnea, we're looking at a $10 billion addressable market. There's nearly 1 billion people suffering from this indication across the globe, and there's currently no registered primary pharmaceutical treatment for obstructive sleep apnea. So our goal is to be the first, and we've developed a unique combination oral treatment for obstructive sleep apnea. The current standard of care at the moment, the gold standard of care, is a device. So positive airway pressure. We've seen some quite large companies globally that distribute and sell the CPAP machine, but there's an extremely high non-compliance rate with that device, and nearly 50% of patients tend to fall off that treatment program. So what we're looking to do to disrupt it is provide an alternative solution, which is a fixed dose oral combination product to be taken prior to going to bed. And we firmly believe, with the results that we've been able to generate previously, that we're primed to take over what is a multi-billion-dollar addressable market. And then if we're looking at the solution that we're providing, if patients are now being prescribed a device that has an extremely high non-compliance rate, and we're potentially able to offer an alternative, which is a non-invasive treatment, we firmly believe that we put ourselves in an extremely strong position to be able to take over a significant portion of that market if we continue to be successful both in the clinic and from a regulatory perspective.
And in terms of psychedelics and cannabinoid-based therapies, what is the state of these kinds of treatments today? As I mentioned, we've come a long way in terms of understanding the science and to really use the science to create next generation or, modalities and treatments based on these compounds. And so where are we today in the field of psychedelics and cannabinoid-based therapies?
Yeah, the both fields have developed quite rapidly over the past few years, and I'd like to think that we've played a big part of that in the development of the assets that we've really been leading both sectors in. There have been progress with the FDA with cannabinoid-based medicines and treatments previously, which is great to see. And then also with the psychedelic sector, there are various companies that are listed on the Nasdaq in the US that have been able to continue to progress and rapidly develop their assets as they continue to work with the FDA as well. We've been able to achieve some of the same results and progress with the FDA. So for us, the FDA have been more than open and willing to be able to work with us, particularly when exploring alternative therapies, which has been extremely pleasing for us because at the end of the day, our programs have the same rigor and governance required as you would expect for any new molecular entity. And we like to present ourselves as a new unique products that we're developing that are on the same path as new molecular entities, and we're achieving and ticking at the same goals that are required to be able to have a registrable product in the long term. So we pride ourselves on being science-led, and we have de-risked each of our assets previously, and will continue to do so moving forward.
In terms of really the mechanisms, what gives cannabinoid or psychedelic-based therapy sort of leverage in terms of really targeting these kinds of some of these diseases that you are targeting?
Yes, so there's a body of research and evidence that clearly demonstrate that cannabinoids and psychedelics have an enhanced therapeutic benefit when used in the right way. And we've been able to de-risk our assets, as I've touched on previously, but we're able to leverage off the body of research, and then we're able to roll that into our preclinical and early stage clinical trials to really further validate and justify the hypothesis behind the development of our clinical assets. So we've continued to deliver positive results over time, whether it's been from a preclinical setting right through to earlier stage and later stage clinical trials, which really does validate a lot of the existing research that has been conducted previously. So really pleased with both the landscape in the cannabinoid and psychedelic research sectors globally. And we're really enthused by the results that we've been able to generate as well, to really be able to provide not only patients with a positive outcome long term, but more importantly, our shareholders who have shown faith in us and have continued to support us time and time again. And we're looking forward to that really paying payback to our shareholders, and this really coming to fruition in the long run.
And it's really interesting that I was reading more about Incanex's pipeline. And in terms of some of the therapies that you're pursuing, one of them for rheumatoid arthritis, you're looking at a synthetic cannabidiol with hydroxychloroquine. So could you speak to us a bit more about that combination? And also, are you exploring treatments as monotherapies? I know this is a actual compounded combination, but even if you have that kind of a treatment, are you exploring it in combination with other existing treatments or other developing treatments? And so how does that pipeline look like?
Yes, so we're looking at it for as a monotherapy. So the combination of CBD and hydroxychloroquine for IHL 6758 has been specifically developed as an anti-inflammatory drug treatment. So initially, we completed a vast amount of preclinical studies validating the hypothesis behind this program, and also shoring up and building a robust and strong IP position. So we've been able to continue to build that asset over time, continue to build out our combination strategy as well, because when looking at hydroxy and chloroquine and CBD, they're two very different base assets, one being an oil base and another being a powder base. So we've been able to uniquely formulate the two combinations in one capsule. So the hydroxychloroquine sits as a soft gel, outer shell, and then we insert the hydroxychloroquine within the gel capsule, which allows us to be able to have stability of both of those assets. So when it is taken by the patient, we target two different mechanisms of action for reducing inflammation within the body when looking at rheumatoid arthritis. So with rheumatoid arthritis being a $50 billion plus addressable market, the company is in an extremely strong position with the IP position that we have, the clinical data that we have to be able to validate and justify the progression of this asset, and we're positioning ourselves to disrupt a multi-billion-dollar addressable market, which is exciting for us, for patients, and for shareholders alike.
Indeed, a lot of scope there, as you said, for shareholders and for patients alike, very importantly so. And in terms of the clinical development, what is there any clinical data, preliminary data that you can share with us in terms of some of these compounds in your pipeline, and also in terms of what milestones might be coming up as well?
Yes, so we've actually had a recent run of positive results that we've been able to pleasingly deliver to the market. And I might start with our lead asset, IHL42X, targeting obstructive sleep apnea. We recently released positive phase 2 data for our a trial that had 120 patients within it. So this was under an open IND, completed in sites within the US. So we were extremely pleased to be able to deliver results that were statistically significant, and clinically meaningful across the board from all of our primary and secondary endpoints. So, for example, on our primary endpoint, we saw up to an 83% reduction on AHI, which is the Apnea Hypopnea Index, which is the gold standard for measuring and diagnosing obstructive sleep apnea. So for us to be able to deliver those results compared to some of our peers in the sector provides us with an immense amount of confidence to be able to continue to rapidly advance this asset, continue discussions, and continue to ramp up discussions with the FDA as we go into our later stage and potentially registrational clinical trials. And this will be these will be clinical trials that will be completed within the US. So extremely pleased to be able to continue to work with the trial sites that we've been able to deliver these positive results through, and then continue to ramp up and build on these results, which we're extremely enthused and pleased by. And then secondly, we've recently released results for one of our other lead assets, PSX-001, targeting generalized anxiety disorder. So again, across all of our primary and secondary endpoints, we saw statistically significant and clinically meaningful results, which again exceeded our expectations and provides us with the opportunity to continue discussions with the FDA. We have an open IND, and we will be progressing to pivotal studies, which will be multi-site, multi-jurisdictional clinical trials throughout the US. So again, we're pleased to be in a position to have that asset at that developmental point, and we look forward to providing the market and our shareholders with further developments and updates as we continue to advance this asset through later stage clinical trials.
Indeed, very exciting. And thank you so much for sharing some of that work with us. And again, it's such an exciting field because of how it's evolved to where it is today. I'd like to also learn more about in terms of you mentioned, of course, engaging with regulatory bodies, the FDA. Who are the other important partners in a drug development sphere or ecosystem as we talk about, whether it's, again, the regulatory agencies or partnering with larger pharma, smaller pharma, CDMOs, CROs? What goes into developing drugs? And are there particular challenges in this space, specifically in terms of psychedelics being, again, a newer class modality, and cannabinoids having been around for longer, and as you mentioned, the FDA having more specific guidelines around them. But how is it navigating a new-ish field, and who are all of those partners and stakeholders in the ecosystem? Patient advocacy groups as well, I might add.
Yes, so there are many moving parts when developing drugs, particularly in the sectors that we're in. If we look specifically to start with at the regulators, extremely important that we have great relationships with the FDA, the DEA as well, when we're looking at importing, exporting, and the scheduling of our assets, and then when we look at ethics boards and committees that we work with over time as well. So from a regulatory standpoint, they're the three main relationships that we need to continue to build and maintain over time. Then we look at external parties that specifically relate to the clinical trial management, development, and running on a day-to-day basis. So there is no more important appointment than the CRO. So when we're spending tens of millions of dollars on developing these assets, we need to ensure that we partner with the right organizations that have the overview and the running of our clinical trials. So the CROs are extremely important because there are many moving parts, from site management to patient management to importing, exporting, distribution of our drugs to the trial sites. And with the size of the clinical trials that we're running, it's extremely important that we have the right CRO partner to ensure that all aspects of the clinical trial run smoothly. Then we move over to the development of the drug product itself. So we have many relationships with CDMOs and raw material suppliers, then distribution partners. So it's important that we have all of those three relationships um, on the same page, because when we're importing raw materials, then formulating and manufacturing our drug product, there are some challenges there. So it's important that we're working with the right partners. But pleasingly for us, we've been working with the same partners for in excess of 5 years now and built up some great relationships there. We understand how our partners work, they understand how we work, and there's times where we have to call upon favors, where we need things done a little bit faster than usual. And I'm pleased to say that we have that relationship in place with our partners at the moment. So across the board, as I mentioned, many moving parts, many partners, but we have well-established partnerships for where we're at as a business right now. But we're also set up for success long term if and when we get to the point of commercialization, which is where we're definitely we are targeting as a business, given that we have later stage development assets that have been de-risked continually over time.
Mhm. Fantastic. I think really understanding and navigating those moving parts is key to really getting from point A to B to C, and so on and so forth. And I'd also like to learn more about really your background. You know, you've been in various different sectors, which is very interesting. And I think it's such an asset to bring diverse experiences into space, especially like drug development, where the creativity and the challenges, again, they're so not general, but in terms of we talk about transferable experiences and skills and things of that nature. So I'd like to learn more about how your earlier experiences have shaped your strategy and your approach to drug development at Incannex.
Yes. So I have a diverse range of experience, which is something that I've prided myself on over time. I think it's extremely important not to pigeonhole yourself and specifically look at one market or one particular role. And this is something that I identified quite early on in my career. Fast forward 20 plus years, I've been able to have some great cross-functional experience in leading strategy, market development, corporate development for some large multinational companies in different fields. What I've been able to learn is how to adapt, evolve, and overcome, regardless of the industry or the sector that we're in. So, as I've mentioned, I've worked in various sectors and I've taken key experiences and learnings from each and every one of those, which has really molded me to who I am today and into the position that I'm in at Incannex. It's provided me with the ability to be able to think innovatively, be able to have the confidence to disrupt markets, and be able to build the team in place to be able to continue to advance our later stage clinical assets. So it's been an exciting journey over time, and I've been with Incannex now coming up 10 years. So I've been CEO for 8 years, and prior to that, I was general manager for the company. But I think something that I haven't really spoken about publicly a lot previously, I was actually an investor in Incannex before I was an employee. So I invested money into Incannex as an investor because I saw some promise in the very, very early stages. And then when the company initially went public on the Australian Stock Exchange, that's when I came on as a full-time employee and general manager. 2 years after that, the board showed some faith and some confidence in me and gave me the opportunity to become CEO. We rapidly changed the strategy and the development of the company at that stage. We had we still do have a great board of directors, had some great mentors and advisors along the way. And fast forward 8 years later, we've been able to continually deliver positive results for our shareholders when looking at our clinical assets. We've been able to transition the company from the ASX over to the Nasdaq, which was a significant development for us, and firmly believe it provides the company with the best opportunity to succeed and the best opportunity for our shareholders to have a favorable return in the long run. We've been able to ensure that the company is adequately funded. So when taking it back to the earlier stage in my career, I was able to understand how to disrupt markets, how to think innovatively, and how to build strong teams to really drive success within an organization. And I'm pleased to say we've been able to do that with the team that we've been able to build, and the disruption that we've been able to provide over the past 8 years.
That's fantastic. And the fact that you were an investor in the company it really speaks to, I guess, the confidence that you had in the company, the promise of its pipeline, and then for you to join and come on board. So I think that really speaks to again, where the company is positioned, and again, like you said, the promise that it holds. And in terms of, I think, the field, as I keep saying, has evolved and come a long way. Where do you see things heading in the next couple of years for the psychedelics and cannabinoid space? And then I guess another question I would have also is, what are specific challenges related to drug development in these spaces?
Yeah, so I might start with the challenges and then I'll transition over to what we see coming over the next 2 years. So the challenges, there are some there, but we've been able to build out the protocols and the governance internally to ensure that we can continually overcome any challenges that we face within this field. It may not be, some other companies may not be as successful in that regard when looking at scheduling issues, import and export. But we have as I mentioned, we have the protocols in place to be able to ensure a sleek, seamless transition in all of those aspects. The main thing when looking at cannabinoids and psychedelics is really the scheduling. There are extra rigor and protocols required when distributing, storing, and dosing to patients. There are additional licenses required at various clinical trial sites as well. But we've been able to build a strong Rolodex of not only clinical trial sites, but key opinion leaders and advisors that help us along the way to ensure seamless running of our clinical trials. And this stems back to the appointment of great partners as well. So again, the appointment of the right advisors, the right CROs, and the right CDMOs is extremely important. Now, fast forwarding to where we see the sector and particularly us over the next couple of years. So we're, as a company, we're hyper focused on having a registrable asset with the FDA over the coming years. We're primed to be able to do that. We're in a position where we're able to expand our 2 lead assets into later stage clinical trials as we continue to build and expand the relationship with the FDA, which has been pleasing today. So fast forward 2 to 3 years, we'd really like to see our company being at a point of having an NDA filed with the FDA. If we look at the sector and the industry in its totality, we'd expect to see more companies entering this space. As I mentioned, we have really been trailblazers and led by example, but we expect to see other companies following our lead and really looking to take advantage of the progress that we've been able to deliver over time. And we look to really promote that as well. Whilst we're hyper focused on what we're doing, we're excited to see other companies come in and really disrupt other sectors and other avenues of being able to provide cannabinoids and psychedelic therapies to patients. Because at the end of the day, we want favorable outcomes for patients. And anyone entering into the sector and providing positive results, we know that it's going to affect and have a greater impact on the end patient, which is what I think ourselves and all companies in the sector would like to see as well.
Indeed. And what specific milestones can we expect from Incannex in the coming months and in the next coming years?
Coming months, it's going to be continued development with the regulators, and we look forward to providing updates to the market and our shareholders. I know they're eagerly awaiting updates. We're actively working. We're all hands on deck as a team at the moment. We're in the most important part of our business, following the results of very exciting clinical trials. So we're actively working day in, day out to continue with the development. And then when we're thinking 2 to 3 years, we're looking at continued results of phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials, which we know are which will continue to move the needle and the dial from the market perspective, and it'll allow us to continue to work with potential partners that we have built some great relationships with over time as well. So those relationships will continue to mature and develop as well.
Wonderful. And we here at Xtalks will definitely be keeping an eye out for all of those milestones. And Joel, once again, thank you so much for your time, your insights, and for sharing all of the wonderful work that you're helping lead at Incannex.
It was an absolute pleasure, and thank you again for having me.
All right, that's the end of this episode of the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. If you liked today's show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.
To join the Xtalks community, visit xtalks.com and register for exclusive access to curated content like live webinars, news articles, and educational videos. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers sharing them and should not be taken as professional advice, nor do they necessarily reflect the policy or position of Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com.